What's your... They had no idea who I was moment. I was buying tampons at CVS when I heard them. 3 women from my husband's office laughing by the pharmacy counter. I recognized Brittany's voice immediately. She'd been to our house for dinner twice. Poor Colton, she said. Stuck with that mousy little wife of his. You should see her at the company parties. Just stands there like wallpaper. I stayed behind the end cap display, gripping my basket. She's so boring, another voice chimed in, Melissa from accounting. I asked her about her job once. She said she works from home. Doing what? Folding laundry? They all laughed. Colton could do so much better, Brittany continued. He's brilliant, rising star at the firm, and she's just there, like dead weight. My phone buzzed. A notification from my broker. The acquisition had gone through. For 3 years, I'd let Colton parade me around as his quiet housewife. I'd smiled politely at these women, made small talk about recipes and home organization. None of them knew I owned the cybersecurity firm their company had just hired for a 7-figure contract, or that I'd built it from my laptop while they assumed I was watching daytime TV. I heard she didn't even finish college, Melissa added. True. I dropped out of MIT when I sold my first startup at 22. The irony was deliberate. After my business partner tried to steal my first company by claiming I was just the pretty face while he was the real genius, I learned to stay invisible, let others take credit, build empires from the shadows. Colton knew, of course. It's why he'd pursued me so aggressively. He loved having a secret weapon, a wife who could hack into any system, who understood corporate infrastructure better than his entire IT department. He'd introduce me as just my better half, while using my insights to climb the corporate ladder. But these women, they saw exactly what I wanted them to see. She won't last, Brittany said confidently. Give it 2 more years. Colton will trade up to someone who can actually contribute to his success. I pulled out my phone and opened the email I'd been drafting for weeks, the one documenting how Brittany had been embezzling from the company for 18 months. Small amounts, clever routing through defunct accounts. I'd found it while doing routine security audits they didn't know I was conducting. Monday would be interesting. I stepped out from behind the display and walked past them to the register. Brittany's face went white. Oh, hey, she said, voice pitched too high. How long have you been here? Just got here, I lied smoothly. Running errands, housewife stuff. They exchanged glances, trying to figure out if I'd heard them. We should grab coffee sometime, Melissa offered weakly. That would be nice, I replied, though next week might be busy. Colton mentioned something about major changes at the office, some kind of investigation. Brittany's hand trembled as she reached for her purse. That night, Colton came home buzzing with excitement. You'll never guess what happened, he said, pouring himself whiskey. Brittany got suspended pending investigation. Accounting found discrepancies. That's terrible, I said, stirring pasta sauce. The timing's perfect, though. With her gone, I'm guaranteed the promotion. He kissed my cheek, completely unaware that I'd just received another email. This one from his boss. Not about Brittany. About him. About the backdoor he'd installed in the company's system 6 months ago, copying proprietary data to sell to competitors. The same backdoor I discovered last month. The one I documented, traced, and reported through anonymous channels. Actually, I said, turning to face him, I got an interesting call today. From the FBI. They want to meet with you tomorrow morning. His glass slipped from his hand, shattering on our marble floor. The whiskey spread across the white tiles like blood. Colton stared at the mess, his face cycling through confusion, panic, and desperate calculation. I watched him process what I'd said, watched the exact moment he realized his perfect world was crumbling. The FBI? His voice cracked on the second word. What would they want with me? I set down my wooden spoon and turned off the burner. The pasta sauce could wait. This conversation had been 3 years in the making. They didn't say specifically. I lied. Something about corporate security breaches, digital forensics. They mentioned they'd been investigating unauthorized data access at your company. Colton's hand shook as he reached for paper towels. Glass crunched under his Italian leather shoes, the ones I'd helped him pick out last month back when I still pretended to care about his success. That's insane, he said, dropping to his knees to clean up the mess. I don't know anything about security breaches. I'm in business development. I negotiate contracts. I know, sweetheart. I crouched beside him, helping collect the larger pieces. I'm sure it's just routine. Maybe they're interviewing everyone with system access. He looked up at me, searching my face for reassurance. For 3 years, I'd been his rock, his supportive wife who listened to his work problems and offered gentle advice, the woman who made him dinner while he vented about difficult clients and office politics. He had no idea I'd been documenting every illegal thing he'd confessed. Did they say what time? He asked. 9 a.m., Federal Building downtown. Agent Rodriguez. Agent Rodriguez was real. She'd been very interested in my anonymous tip about systematic corporate espionage, especially when I'd provided detailed logs of every file Colton had copied, every client list he'd stolen, every proprietary algorithm he'd sold to competitors. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner, Zara. Colton Industries just dropped their retainer. Want me to send them a thank you card? I smiled and typed back, not yet. Tomorrow. Who's texting? Colton asked, standing up with a dustpan full of glass. My sister. She wants to know if we're still coming to brunch Sunday. Another lie. My sister lived in Oregon and hadn't spoken to me since I'd refused to lend her money for her 3rd failed restaurant. But Colton never paid attention to my family anyway. They weren't useful to him. He dumped the glass in the trash, his movements jerky and nervous. Maybe we should call a lawyer, just to be safe. If you think that's necessary, I said, though it might look suspicious, like you have something to hide. His eyes snapped to mine. I don't have anything to hide. Of course not, I soothed. You're the most honest person I know. That was true, in a twisted way. Colton was honest about his dishonesty. He bragged about his schemes, proud of how clever he was. He told me about every client he'd cheated, every contract he'd rigged, every system he'd compromised. He thought I was too simple to understand the implications. I need a drink, he muttered, reaching for the whiskey bottle. Maybe you should have a clear head tomorrow, I suggested. He paused, bottle halfway to his lips. You're right. You're always right. He set it down and kissed my forehead. What would I do without you? I guess we'll find out, I said softly. He was already walking toward his home office, pulling out his phone to call his lawyer. I heard him pacing, his voice rising as he explained the situation. I finished making dinner alone, listening to him panic in the next room. 3 years ago, I might have felt guilty, might have warned him what was coming, but that was before I understood who he really was. The first red flag had been so small I'd almost missed it. 6 months after our wedding, I'd been reorganizing his files and found a contract from a client I didn't recognize. When I'd asked about it casually over dinner, he'd laughed. That's the beauty of it, he'd said. They think they're hiring Colton's company for cybersecurity consulting. They have no idea I'm selling their data to their biggest competitor. He'd expected me to be impressed by his cleverness. Instead, I'd started paying attention. For 3 years, I'd been the perfect wife. I'd cooked his favorite meals, and listened to his stories, and smiled at his colleagues. I'd let them all think I was nobody, just Colton's quiet little housewife who didn't understand the business world. While they dismissed me, I was building something they couldn't imagine. My company, Phantom Security, had grown from a one-woman operation to a 50-employee firm with clients across 3 continents. I'd developed proprietary algorithms that could detect security breaches in real time, trace digital fingerprints through the most complex networks, and identify corporate espionage with 97% accuracy. And the best part? Colton's company had just signed a 7-figure contract with us. They'd hired me to investigate themselves. My phone rang. Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Garrison? This is Agent Rodriguez with the FBI's Cyber Crime Division. We spoke yesterday about the evidence you provided. Yes, I said, walking out to the back patio where Colton couldn't hear. We've reviewed the materials. The documentation is extremely thorough. We'll need your husband to come in for questioning tomorrow morning. He's planning to bring a lawyer. That's his right. But I should warn you, the evidence is substantial. We're looking at multiple felony charges: corporate espionage, wire fraud, violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. If convicted, he's looking at 15 to 20 years. I sat down on our patio chair, looking through the window at Colton pacing in his office. He was gesturing wildly, probably trying to convince his lawyer this was all a misunderstanding. Mrs. Garrison, are you still there? Yes, I'm here. We'll also need to speak with you at some point. As his spouse, you might have observed behaviors or conversations that could be relevant to the investigation. Of course, I said. Whatever I can do to help. One more thing. The anonymous tip that started this investigation, it was remarkably detailed. Whoever provided it had extensive knowledge of your husband's activities and access to sophisticated forensic tools. I smiled, watching Colton through the window. Some people are very good at staying invisible, Agent Rodriguez. Indeed. We'll be in touch. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering darkness, listening to the sound of Colton's panic filtering through the glass doors. Tomorrow, his world would end, his career, his reputation, his freedom, all gone, and I would finally be free to stop pretending I was nobody. My phone buzzed with a text from Brittany. Hey girl, want to grab drinks this weekend? I could use some girl time after this crazy week at work. I stared at the message for a long moment. Brittany had no idea that her embezzlement charges would be filed Monday morning. She thought she was safe, that her crime was too small and too clever to be detected. She was about to learn the same lesson as her husband. I typed back, sure, I'd love to hear about what's been happening at the office. You can tell me all about it. The next morning, I made Colton breakfast. Eggs Benedict, his favorite. He pushed the food around his plate, too nervous to eat. You don't have to come with me, he said for the 3rd time. I want to be there for you, I replied, refilling his coffee. That's what wives do. He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm so lucky to have you. You believe in me when no one else does. I see you exactly as you are, I said. He smiled, misunderstanding completely. At 8:45 a.m., we sat in the waiting area of the federal building. Colton's lawyer, a sharp-dressed man named Vincent Walsh, reviewed documents and whispered urgently in Colton's ear. I sat quietly, scrolling through emails on my phone. One was from the CEO of Colton's company. They'd discovered the security breach overnight and were conducting an emergency audit of all systems. They'd suspended 3 employees pending investigation. Another was from Zara. Channel 7 wants to interview you about the Phantom Security expansion. Should I schedule it? I typed back. After lunch, I should be free by then. Mrs. Garrison? A woman in a gray suit approached. Agent Rodriguez was younger than I'd expected, with sharp eyes and a confident handshake. Thank you for coming. Of course. She looked at Colton and Vincent. Mr. Garrison, we're ready for you. Colton stood on unsteady legs. He kissed my cheek, his lips cold with fear. I'll be right here waiting, I promised. He disappeared through a door marked Authorized Personnel Only. Vincent followed, briefcase in hand. Agent Rodriguez lingered. Would you like to grab coffee? There's a cafe downstairs. This could take several hours. I followed her to the elevator. As the doors closed, she spoke quietly. The evidence you provided was extraordinary. Most corporate espionage cases take months to build. You handed us everything we needed on a silver platter. I'm very detail-oriented. Your husband had no idea what you were doing? My husband thinks I spend my days watching cooking shows and organizing closets. She laughed. Men like him never see what's right in front of them. We sat in the cafe, surrounded by federal employees grabbing morning coffee. Agent Rodriguez pulled out a tablet. Walk me through how you discovered his activities. It started small, I said. Comments he made at dinner, stories about difficult clients that didn't add up. Then I started noticing patterns in his behavior. Late night calls, encrypted files on his personal laptop, cash deposits that didn't match his salary. You have forensic training? MIT dropout, actually. Computer science. I've been working in cybersecurity for over a decade. Her eyebrows raised. Working where? I smiled. I own Phantom Security. We specialize in corporate digital forensics and breach detection. Agent Rodriguez nearly choked on her coffee. Phantom Security? You're Phoebe Garrison. The Phoebe Garrison? Guilty. Your company just cracked the Brennan Industries case. Saved them $30 million in stolen intellectual property. She stared at me. And your husband had no idea? None whatsoever. I let him think I was just his supportive little housewife while I built a company that now employs 53 people and generates 8 figures in annual revenue. Why? Because invisible people see everything. Agent Rodriguez leaned back in her chair. This is incredible. You've been investigating your own husband for corporate crimes while running one of the most successful cybersecurity firms in the country. And he thought you were nobody. He saw what I wanted him to see. My phone buzzed. A text from Melissa at Colton's company. OMG, did you see the news? 3 people got arrested for fraud, including Brittany. Your husband must be freaking out. I showed the text to Agent Rodriguez. She grinned. Let me guess. You found evidence on all of them. Brittany's embezzlement was particularly sloppy. She was using company credit cards to pay personal expenses, then coding them as business meals. Melissa was skimming from client accounts. And the third person, Director Thompson, was approving fake vendor payments that went straight to his personal account, all while they thought you were just a housewife. All while they thought I was nobody worth noticing. 2 hours later, Agent Rodriguez walked me back upstairs. Through the window of the interview room, I could see Colton slumped in his chair, his lawyer taking frantic notes. He's confessing? I asked. The evidence was overwhelming. His lawyer advised cooperation. He's admitted to systematic data theft, corporate espionage, and fraud. We're talking about a minimum of 12 years, possibly more depending on the total damages. I felt nothing. No sadness, no guilt, no satisfaction, just a calm sense of completion. What happens next? Arraignment tomorrow. He'll be released on bond pending trial, but his assets will be frozen. The company will likely file civil suits as well. Agent Rodriguez looked at me carefully. Are you going to be okay? Financially, I mean? I'll be fine. That was an understatement. With my company's success and my separate bank accounts, I had more money than Colton had ever dreamed of. Money he knew nothing about. One more thing, Agent Rodriguez said. Would you be interested in consulting with us? Your skills could be invaluable in financial crime investigations. I'll consider it. The interview room door opened. Colton emerged looking 10 years older, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face gray with shock. Vincent walked beside him, already on his phone with what sounded like a bail bondsman. Colton saw me and tried to smile. Hey, ready to go home? How did it go? It's a misunderstanding, he said. My lawyer thinks we can get the charges reduced. Maybe probation instead of jail time. Vincent caught my eye and shook his head slightly. There would be no reduced charges, not with the evidence I'd provided. We drove home in silence. Colton stared out the window while I navigated traffic. As we pulled into our driveway, he finally spoke. I might need to sell some things. Legal fees are going to be expensive. What kinds of things? The boat. Maybe the BMW. The vacation house in Aspen. I nodded. He had no idea those assets were already beyond his reach. By Monday, federal marshals would be placing liens on everything in his name. Whatever you need to do, I said. That afternoon, while Colton locked himself in his office making desperate phone calls, I drove to my real office. Phantom Security operated out of a sleek downtown high-rise. 53 employees working across 4 floors, developing cutting-edge security protocols for Fortune 500 companies. Zara met me at the elevator, grinning widely. I saw the news about Colton's company. 3 arrests, including that Brittany woman who was so rude at your holiday party. 4 arrests, I corrected. They got Colton too. Her mouth dropped open. Seriously? FBI raided this morning. Corporate espionage, fraud, the works. Holy shit, are you okay? I'm perfect. We walked to my corner office, past employees who nodded respectfully as I passed. These people knew who I was. They'd seen me build this company from nothing, watched me develop the algorithms that revolutionized corporate security auditing. So what's the plan? Zara asked, closing my office door behind us. Channel 7 interview at 3. I want to announce the expansion into the European market. We've got 3 new contracts lined up in London. And Colton? What about him? Are you getting divorced? I sat behind my desk, looking out at the city skyline. I suppose I'll have to. Hard to stay married to someone who's going to prison for fraud. You could visit him. I laughed. I don't think so. At 3 p.m., I sat in the Channel 7 studio, facing reporter Diana Chang. The cameras rolled, and she began with the questions I'd expected. Phantom Security has grown incredibly fast. What's your secret? We see things others miss, I said. Security isn't just about firewalls and encryption. It's about understanding human behavior, the patterns that reveal when someone is stealing data or manipulating systems. Your company just signed several major contracts, including one with Colton Industries, which has been in the news today for arrest related to corporate espionage. Yes, we were hired to conduct a security audit. Our investigation uncovered systematic data theft and fraud, but that must have been difficult, considering your personal connection to the company. Diana had done her research. She knew about my marriage. Personal feelings can't interfere with professional responsibilities, I said. When we discover criminal activity, we report it to the appropriate authorities. Every time, even when it involves people close to you, especially then. The interview aired at 6 p.m. I watched from home while Colton sat beside me on the couch, his phone in his lap, waiting for his lawyer to call with updates on his case. On screen, I looked confident and professional. The Chiron read, Phoebe Garrison, CEO, Phantom Security. Colton stared at the television. Wait, is that you? Yes? You're the CEO of Phantom Security? I own the company. I built it. He grabbed the remote and rewound the segment. Watched it again. His face went through a series of expressions. Confusion, disbelief, dawning comprehension. You own Phantom Security. He repeated slowly. I've owned it for 6 years. But that's impossible. You work from home. You do housewife stuff. I work from home because I own the company. I can work wherever I want. He stood up, pacing to the window. Phantom Security. Jesus Christ. Do you know how much money that company makes? Of course I do. I sign the paychecks. You're worth millions. Yes. He spun around to face me. Why didn't you tell me? You never asked what I did during the day. You assumed I was cleaning and organizing and watching television. But we're married. Married couples tell each other things like this. I muted the television. Do they? Because you never told me about selling client data to competitors. You never mentioned the fake vendor payments or the unauthorized system access. You kept plenty of secrets, Colton. His face went pale. You know about that? I know about everything. The Morrison Industries deal where you sold their product specifications to their biggest rival. The Henderson account where you copied their customer database. The Peterson contract where you installed backdoors in their accounting system. How could you possibly? He stopped. Understanding flooded his features. You. It was you. You're the one who turned me in. I'm the one who discovered your crimes and reported them to federal authorities. Yes. You destroyed my life. No. I said calmly. You destroyed your life. I just documented it. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. This is insane. My own wife. How long have you known about your criminal activities? 3 years? Since the Morrison deal. 3 years? And you said nothing? I said plenty. You just weren't listening. What do you mean? I turned to face him fully. Remember when you told me about the Morrison contract? I asked if it was legal. You laughed and said legality was for people without imagination. When you showed me the Henderson database, I asked if they'd given permission for you to copy it. You said permission was overrated. Those were jokes. Were they? Because the FBI found them very serious. Colton stood up again, pacing frantically. You could have stopped me. If you knew what I was doing was wrong, you could have said something. I did say something. To federal investigators. I mean to me. You could have warned me. Like you warned me when you told Brittany and Melissa that I was dead weight? When you let them mock me for being boring and stupid? He stopped pacing. You heard that? I hear everything, Colton. That's what you never understood. While you and your colleagues dismissed me as some empty-headed housewife, I was watching and listening and learning exactly who you all really were. Brittany and Melissa, they're in jail too. Embezzlement and fraud, respectively. He sat heavily on the couch. You destroyed all of us. You destroyed yourselves. I just made sure there were consequences. My phone rang. Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Garrison, I wanted to update you. Your husband's arraignment is set for Monday morning, and we've had some interesting developments. Oh? Turns out 3 other companies have come forward with evidence of similar schemes. Your husband's operation was much larger than we initially thought. We're looking at federal charges in 4 different jurisdictions now. I watched Colton's face as I took the call. He could only hear my side of the conversation, but he understood enough. How much larger? I asked. We're estimating total damages in excess of $15 million. The prosecutor is discussing a 25-year sentence. I see. Also, your consulting offer is still open. The Department of Justice is very interested in your expertise. Thank you. I'll consider it. After I hung up, Colton looked at me with something approaching terror. 25 years? Apparently your crimes were more extensive than even I realized. I'll die in prison. Probably not. You'll be about 70 when you get out. He started to cry then, not the dignified tears of remorse, but the ugly sobbing of a man who'd finally realized the full scope of his consequences. Please, he whispered. You have to help me. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, that I didn't mean to commit crimes. But you did mean to. You bragged about how clever you were. I'll do anything. I'll change. I'll be different. I looked at this man I'd been married to for 3 years. The man who'd introduced me to his colleagues as just my better half, while using my insights to advance his career. The man who'd let his coworkers mock me while he stood silently by, too cowardly to defend me, and too selfish to correct their assumptions. There's nothing you can do, Colton. You made your choices. But we're married. You're supposed to support me. I did support you. For 3 years, I gave you the benefit of every doubt. I listened to your stories and offered advice, and pretended I didn't understand the implications of what you were telling me. I supported you right up until the moment I realized you were never going to stop. What am I supposed to do now? I suppose you'll figure that out. You're so clever after all. He left that night, packed a bag and drove to his mother's house, too ashamed to stay in the same building as the wife who'd revealed his crimes to federal prosecutors. I didn't see him again until the arraignment. Monday morning, I sat in the back of the courtroom wearing my best business suit. Colton stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled, his expensive haircut already growing out. The prosecutor read the charges. 23 counts of wire fraud, 15 counts of corporate espionage, 8 counts of computer fraud, 3 counts of money laundering. How do you plead? The judge asked. Not guilty, Your Honor, Vincent replied. A trial would take months. During that time, Colton would remain in federal custody. No bail for someone facing potentially life in prison. As they let him away, he looked back and saw me sitting in the gallery. Our eyes met for a moment. I saw no love there anymore. No affection or shared history, just pure hatred. He mouthed something. I couldn't make out the words, but his expression made the meaning clear. I smiled and gave him a small wave. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. They'd connected the dots between my husband's arrest and my company's investigation. Mrs. Garrison, is it true you discovered evidence of your husband's crimes? Mrs. Garrison, will you be filing for divorce? Mrs. Garrison, how does it feel to send your own husband to prison? I stopped at the microphones. This was my moment to set the record straight. My company was hired to investigate security breaches at Colton Industries. We discovered systematic criminal activity and reported it to federal authorities as required by law. The fact that one of the perpetrators happened to be my husband is unfortunate, but it didn't change our professional responsibilities. Are you getting divorced? I'll be filing papers this afternoon. Do you have any regrets about turning in your husband? I thought about the question for a moment. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of being dismissed and underestimated, and treated like an accessory to his success. None whatsoever. That evening, I had dinner with Zara and my senior staff. We were celebrating the European expansion and 3 new contracts we'd signed since the publicity from Colton's arrest. It's ironic, Zara said, raising her wine glass. His crimes made you famous. Business is booming because everyone wants to hire the woman who caught her own husband committing fraud. The woman who caught her own husband and his entire criminal enterprise, corrected David, my head of digital forensics. The FBI said it was the most comprehensive corporate espionage investigation they'd ever received. To Phoebe, Zara said, the invisible woman who sees everything. We clinked glasses. Around us, other diners stared and whispered. I was recognizable now, my face on the cover of Forbes and Business Week. The shy housewife act was over forever. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You destroyed my life, you vindictive bitch. I hope you're happy. Colton, texting from jail. I showed the message to Zara. She laughed. Want me to trace the number? We could probably get him in more trouble for harassing you. No need, I said, deleting the text. He'll have plenty of time to work through his feelings over the next 25 years. 6 months later, I was in London, meeting with potential European clients. Phantom Security had opened offices in 3 countries and employed over 200 people worldwide. My phone rang during lunch. Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Garrison, I have news about your husband's case. Former husband, I corrected. The divorce was finalized last month. Right. Anyway, Colton took a plea deal. He'll serve 15 years instead of 25. And the others? Brittany got 5 years. Melissa got 3. Director Thompson got 7. Your evidence was crucial in all the convictions. I'm glad justice was served. There's something else. Colton gave an interview to the prison newsletter. He claims you framed him. Says you planted evidence and manipulated the investigation. I laughed. Of course he does. For what it's worth, we know that's impossible. The evidence was too extensive and too detailed to be fabricated. Plus, we verified everything independently. Colton never could accept responsibility for his actions. Speaking of which, that consulting position with the Department of Justice is still available. We could use someone with your skills. I'll think about it. After hanging up, I walked through Hyde Park, thinking about the path that had brought me here. 3 years ago, I'd been a ghost. A woman so invisible that her own husband's colleagues felt comfortable mocking her in public. Now I employed hundreds of people. My company was featured in textbooks as a case study in rapid business growth. I'd been invited to speak at conferences and universities about cybersecurity and corporate fraud detection. And somewhere in a federal prison in Colorado, my ex-husband was learning what it meant to be truly powerless. My phone buzzed with a text from Zara. Channel 9 wants to interview you about the new government contracts. Also, MIT called. They want to offer you an honorary degree. I smiled, looking up at the London sky. Sometimes the best revenge was simply becoming everything they said you could never be. That night, I had dinner with the CEO of a major European bank. She'd hired Phantom Security to overhaul their entire cybersecurity infrastructure after a data breach had cost them 50 million euros. I have to ask, she said over dessert. Is the story true? About discovering your husband was committing crimes? Which part? The part where his colleagues thought you were just a housewife while you were actually running a cybersecurity empire. That part's true. And you documented his crimes for 3 years before reporting him? Also true. She shook her head in amazement. How did you keep it secret for so long? People see what they expect to see. Colton and his colleagues expected to see a boring housewife, so that's all they could see. They never looked deeper. But why wait 3 years? Why not turn him in immediately? I considered the question. I suppose I wanted to be absolutely certain, and I wanted to make sure I had enough evidence to ensure convictions. Were you angry when you discovered what he was doing? No, I said honestly. I was disappointed, but not surprised. Why not surprised? Because I'd been watching him lie to clients and colleagues for months before I realized he was also committing crimes. The fraud was just an extension of who he already was. She leaned forward, intrigued. You weren't in love with him anymore? I don't think I ever was. I was in love with the person I thought he was. The person he pretended to be when he was courting me. And when did you realize that person didn't exist? When I heard his colleagues mocking me and he said nothing to defend me, that's when I understood that to him I was just a prop. Something to make him look successful and stable. So you decided to destroy him? I decided to stop protecting him. The next morning, I flew back to New York. Waiting for me at the office was a package with no return address. Inside was a letter, handwritten on prison stationery. Phoebe, it began. I've had time to think about what happened between us. I realize now that I underestimated you. I thought I was so clever, but you were always 3 steps ahead. I suppose I deserve what happened to me. I just want you to know that I don't hate you anymore. I understand why you did what you did. I hope you're happy, Colton. I read the letter twice, then filed it away. Maybe he was sincere. Maybe prison had given him perspective on his actions. Or maybe this was just another manipulation, an attempt to make me feel guilty or sorry for him. It didn't matter. The Colton chapter of my life was closed forever. That afternoon, I had a meeting with Agent Rodriguez and 3 other federal investigators. They wanted to discuss a consulting contract with the Department of Justice. We're creating a new task force focused on corporate cybercrime, Agent Rodriguez explained. We need someone who understands both the technical and psychological aspects of these cases. What would be involved? Training for our investigators, developing protocols for digital evidence collection, and occasional fieldwork on major cases. How occasional? Maybe 6 cases a year. High-profile investigations where your expertise would be crucial. I thought about it. Phantom Security was running smoothly under Zara's management. I could afford to take on side projects. I'm interested. There's one more thing, said Agent Rodriguez. We've been approached by several other countries. They want training on your methods for detecting corporate espionage. Would you be open to international consulting? Very. 3 months later, I was standing before a United Nations committee in Geneva, presenting my company's protocols for detecting and documenting financial crimes. Delegates from 47 countries listened as I explained how behavioral pattern analysis could reveal corporate espionage networks. During the break, the delegate from Germany approached me. Dr. Garrison, she said, we have a situation in Munich. A pharmaceutical company suspects their competitors are stealing research data. Would Phantom Security be interested in investigating? We'd be very interested. By the end of the week, I'd signed consulting contracts with 6 different countries. Phantom Security was becoming the global gold standard for corporate digital forensics. 2 years after Colton's arrest, I was featured on the cover of Time magazine. The headline read, "The Invisible Woman: How Phoebe Garrison Built a Cybersecurity Empire While the World Thought She Was Nobody." The article detailed my journey from dismissed housewife to international business leader. It included interviews with former colleagues who admitted they'd underestimated me, and competitors who praised my innovative approaches to corporate security. There was also a sidebar about Colton, now 3 years into his prison sentence. The article mentioned that he'd started a prison newsletter called Second Chances, and was teaching computer literacy to other inmates. I felt nothing reading about his attempts at redemption. He was no longer part of my story. The real satisfaction came from the final paragraph of the article. Today, Phantom Security employs over 500 people worldwide and generates more than $200 million in annual revenue. Garrison has revolutionized corporate cybersecurity and helped prosecute dozens of white-collar criminals. Her advice to other women? Sometimes the best superpower is being underestimated. While they're dismissing you, you can be building something extraordinary. That evening, I had dinner at a restaurant in Manhattan. At the table next to mine, 2 women were having a heated discussion about their work colleague. She's so basic, one said. Just sits there in meetings saying nothing. I don't even know why they hired her. Maybe she has connections, the other replied. It's certainly not because of her brilliant insights. They laughed, continuing their conversation about this apparently unremarkable colleague. I smiled, thinking about that woman they were dismissing, wondering what she was really thinking during those meetings, what she was observing, what she was planning. People never learn. After dinner, I walked through Times Square, surrounded by tourists and bright lights. My phone buzzed with messages from clients, employees, and journalists. Phantom Security had 3 major announcements planned for next month, including a partnership with Interpol and the opening of our 7th international office. I'd built all of this while the world thought I was nobody. And in a federal prison in Colorado, my ex-husband was learning that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone ignores. Sometimes the best revenge is success. And sometimes the best superpower is being invisible until you decide to reveal yourself. The women at CVS had thought they knew who I was. They'd seen a mousy little housewife buying tampons and pitied my husband for being stuck with such dead weight. They had no idea they were looking at someone who would reshape an entire industry, prosecute dozens of criminals, and build a global empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They had no idea who I was, but I did, and that made all the difference.